What's good with the YouTube? You already know, Big Flocker with a convict's perspective. I'm gonna smash, dash, and slide on through that little bit of energy, man. Please hit the like, subscribe, comment, and do all things to help support this channel and the algorithm, and hit that bell notification, fire exclusives, content, and whatnot. So we're gonna get straight to it. So we're gonna talk about something that really hasn't been talked about too much on here. Other people have pretty much corroborated this about the 2014 filter, man. Okay, so in 2014, this was upon the release of all the carnales that were coming out from the end of all hostilities. And there was a big change that happened within the movement. Okay. The title Northerner was deleted. Okay. Now everybody was recognized as Norteños. You had Norteños and then you had Norteño soldados, those that committed to the movement, basically bros, hermanos, NR. Those that had been recruited, pulled, had their status stamped by a C, and were considered within the elite circle of honorable soldados. Okay. Now, the reason why this changed was because for a while, one, as these C's were locked up in the shoe, they were getting a lot of reports about what was going on, where they had one individual that was running these yards as an soldado who was misusing the bonds, abusing their authority, making decisions, rendering outcomes on people's status without it going through a higher authority. You know what I'm saying? Now, basically, that higher authority is always going to be a C. In the absence of a C, your bonds are basically your guidance to make an authority decision. Okay. And there was a lot of dudes that used to always refer to people as he's just a northerner. Okay. So they went back to the old ways, the Norteños. Okay. But they didn't go back to the hermano part. Now, within that, they changed a whole different structure within the chain of command. Okay. Which they created what you call a Norteño panel. Okay. Norteño panel consisted of basically three departments. One, education. Now, the educators, they would have an educational bracket that would to indoctrinate all soldados, a basic course for everyone and northerners to get the proper educational attainments. Okay. Now, it was almost like there was different tiers to it. They were starting to go back a little bit to the old ways. There were certain more advanced individuals that took on a more extreme role in hands-on, education. But the educators of this panel would also run the investigations. Okay. Now, the second one would be the finance department. They would basically run all financial departments for that facility or that yard. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times they would have communications with a particular canal. A lot of those were going from there to Salinas Valley. I'm not going to mention who they were reporting to, but everybody knows who one of the individuals that got caught up in Operation Quiet Storm, and it wasn't anyone that was a general. Okay, but that's where all the reports of all the financial parts were going. Okay. Then the third department was security. That was based upon the security upon that institution. Every squad procedure from a squad leader to fucking yard security to building security, building channels, whatever title that they were using, that would be your third department. And see, all decisions within the Norteño or Northerners Collective would be based upon this three-man vote and would basically have to be stamped by a C. Okay, so the Carnales used to operate like this. They would let the Norteños take care of all business for the Norteño movement and just get reports. They wouldn't have to involve themselves as they did if they were on a yard where there was a lot of C's. They would take on a hands-on approach. You know what I'm saying? There were certain C's that actually took on a role in this Norteño panel, believe it or not. There was also undercover carnals, that were a part of that panel as well, being that they had been on a probationary period for 6 to 9 months and to see where they obtained and whether they were going to come out as a C. See, they're still operating with UCs. Okay. Now, the whole purpose of what they realized what they needed to do was there was too much paperwork, right? And there was too much people within this chain of command. You know what I mean? On one part, you had the top that was just individually making decisions, which they felt wasn't always appropriate. So they had to change that. With this Norteño panel, they would make decisions, and basically it would go through a higher authority process. You know what I'm saying? Now, of course, a higher authority at any time, like right now, can sit there and impose and make any decision they want. Now, when it came to certain things, as far as on a higher scale, it would have to go to whatever Carnale had to deal with this panel. Okay. Sometimes the Cat 3 member or whatnot would be the one directly dealing with this. Sometimes it would be maybe even a Cat 1 or Cat 2 that would directly talk to this panel. Every institution was supposed to function in accordance to this. This was a branch of union. And basically, there was no longer a council based upon everywhere. Now, before there was once a council that was up in the Bay that was a chain of a command for the Nuestra Raza, for the Norteño movement. Now that the seeds were out there, they took more on a hands-on approach, and they correlate a lot of their communications with other institutions, with those that would be in charge of the Norteno movement. So it got kind of interesting how things operated. Um, you know, the finance department, that was a new position. You know, they would be in charge of basically all the store tiendas, the dope that was coming in, the percentage that was supposed to go to the casa, all ledgers and whatnot. And then the education department and the security department, which this consisted of three different brackets they felt that it took to run a institution, which clearly makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Before you'd have just those at the higher rank and higher position that would take on this responsibility. Now they were spreading out to those that they felt that were competent soldados, right? And basically those would be appointed in position, usually recommended within by the higher authorities. You know what I'm saying? What they came to realize was that they changed a lot of things as far as the recruitment. I was told too that I think it was you had to have 3 years to be on a panel, right? Which I think 5 years would have been appropriate. Now I may be wrong on that, but this is what's been told to me by an soldado that I know. Um, 3 years to be sponsors as well. You had to have two, and it still had to be stamped by a higher authority, unless you were in contact with a higher authority that would make that stamp for you. You just pulled them and just submitted their names, which is kind of like how it was when I was in the system at times. If you were on a facility where there was no carnals, you know what I'm saying? There was times where I've recruited people, and then when I got to corporate, I submitted their name and they stamped them. And then I would let the person know that their status was legit now. On what, give them the date and whatnot. I'd have the code established. Nowadays, it's a little bit different because you have the carnales out there. Now, a lot of this, like I said, these changes were made because there was those that were feeling inferior to those that were holding insoldado statuses. Like I said, you'd also hear people say, "Oh, he's just a northerner." And so now they're all Norteños. Just some of those Norteños have more responsibility, more obligation, and their status hasn't changed at all. The insoldados. Only difference is now the titles, and that now they have carnales out there that can oversee their functions. So this system was created to prevent anybody from abusing their authority. You know what I'm saying? If you got a three-man panel, they're going to be able to assist you in helping make the appropriate decisions in accordance to the law. You know what I'm saying? But you have to have competent soldados. You know what I'm saying? There's some of us that back in the days that would hold OA positions, or and we had the educational attainments that we were trusted as far as anywhere we went. There's also those that went from like reception center to a fucking level 2 that their education was minimal, and they were making decisions based upon the education that they had, and they didn't cover their ass. Therefore, a lot of wrong decisions were being made. See, that's what people forget, that in the movement, there's going to be those that are going to sit there and hold animosity and issues. So if you're a SEAL man running a institution or something, right, or a yard, right, very few insoldados run the whole institution back in the days. Only a select few ever had that, distinguished to do so, like a whole prison. And those were usually what you would consider a stronghold, a place to where there's normally a C there, but in the absence of a C, an soldado is going to hold that position, right? And then all they're going to do is fall in accordance to the law, which I've seen it numerous times. I never quit, and I had to take over the reins a few times. You know what I'm saying? So it's, like I said, the way things operate, they change. And a lot of things have evolved. I'm learning different things as far as the advancement. The communications are a lot better. I'm not going to go into how they communicate. I think everybody knows through the encrypted sites. It's pretty easy. Nowadays people have access to people 24/7. You got tablets now. You know what I'm saying? That they're giving you. So basically, as long as you have an established code that can't be fucking breached, you're good. But in any event, man, this Norteno panel is now basically the chain of command on any yard. Now, you could be on a yard where there's fucking a bunch of Northerners, a few Ensoldados, and then a bunch of C's. Those C's are going to involve themselves to the magnitude of what they want to involve themselves in. Mainly, they're more focused on money, generating the income and whatnot, and their responsibilities, as opposed to other individuals who, the street movement, not the street movement, the movement and the struggle behind the walls is consistently ran by the Ensoldados. You know what I'm saying? They're not there to babysit. They're going to give those, if they delegate those, the responsibility to uphold it. And if you fail, then you're going to get dealt with. So everything has to be in accordance to still the bylaws and structure. And which would be kind of difficult, man, because if you're so used to functioning on a certain level of awareness and discipline and security, and things have changed, and now you're having to deal with these individuals, and now you have a financial department, now you have a panel, it's a change. it's not a bad change. I get why they did it because there was a time period where like institutions in the 90s and 2000s were not being honored, like places like Avenal. Sometimes you get reports, or Susanville, or Jamestown. And when we got these type of B&Ls, we didn't know who made these decisions, if they were unhonorable in soul, or because a lot of times they weren't always submitting their names. Now, if they submitted their name, their 5x5 information to run a cross check and who they are and maybe who their channel was, then maybe things would be honored. But otherwise, we would take it as cross reference. You know what I'm saying? Because the only type of authority that you would have to acknowledge would be a Garnal at that time. I've seen this numerous times, man. And where we got filters with B&Ls from a certain institution, and those dudes ended up getting cleared. Straight up. So a lot of these institutions were sending fucking B&Ls to other institutions, and people were acting on them. And that's when we had to step in and sit there and say, nah, if it comes from certain institutions, use this as a cross-reference to investigate. Now, if a dude's on the B&L and doesn't report that he had any issues or whatnot, that's usually going to be a red flag, But there was multiple levels of abuses that were occurring at times. It's always been like that, Where there's jealousy, greed, corruption, you know what I'm saying? Where there's jealousy and greed, there's going to be corruption and betrayal, you know what I'm saying? So this new system that I've heard about and got a quick breakdown on this filter, it makes sense. The changes within the Norteno and Ensol, I mean, that clearly makes sense. It just puts Nortenos on more of an equal footing like they were supposed to be. But then you have those that have taken on more responsibility. Therefore, they have more of an extreme obligation, which is how it was always supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? Now, you just can't come in there and just wreak havoc just because you're supposed to be on equal stature. Equality means that everybody's treated equal. Everybody's entitled to due process and whatnot. It doesn't mean that you reserve any right to challenge anything that's put in front of you. You see what I'm saying? Because Bond 5 tells you all right there. You will acknowledge and respect the authority in charge. And Bond 4 tells you if you become any type of if you create any type of internal confrontation by your individual stinking, or if you show any type of favoritism, you will be dealt with. So a lot of times people have to really get the true concepts and breakdowns of what the bylaws mean. And that's why they created these panels. So therefore you had all kinds of different departments, and it makes sense. When I got a full breakdown of it, I asked some questions, and I didn't get back. I asked if there was because before there used to be a chain of command basically in the Bay that overseen the Norteno movement. So I asked who is overseeing it now, and there's really no answer to that. I think that's going amongst the Carnales. You know what I'm saying? I think that they work parallel, like I said, and everybody's in contact with everybody nowadays. If it's an established foothold, a stronghold is going to be a place where things are honored, and a place that's honored is where you have a righteous C and a regiment commander there. See, technically, a regiment can only be where there's a Carnal there on the said facility. You know what I'm saying? If there's just a Norteno or a Northern, it's not going to be considered a regiment. You know what I'm saying? And those are strictly facts right there. But these are the new changes, man, that I've heard that nobody's really broken down. That was different from when I was in the system. Things are evolving. They're going to continue to change. What's going on today and what went on 9 years ago will be different maybe tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? But so far, I mean, it's not a bad system from looking at it from an outsider's point of view that used to be involved. Because I've seen a lot of people who were placed in positions. See, there's two sides to it. There was dudes that were placed in positions that should have never been put in positions. But sometimes you got to worry about this. What if you have a 3-man panel with you, and the two of those individuals are not as educated? Therefore, they vote against you, and you're going to be held accountable for decisions where someone doesn't know any better, or they're politicking against you. That's the things you got to worry about. So I don't know if there's a outer. I would have to think that there'd have to be a council outside of this panel that has decisions to make for the Norteno movement. Therefore, if there's any discrepancies, one of these panel members could file a report. But I haven't heard anything. But that's what I would think, because you have to have someone that oversees the whole collective of the Norteno movement. What I mean by that, the policies, the new set procedures, the branch of union. You know what I mean? To get everybody parallel, you have to have that. Because if not, you're going to have people who are going to run, especially if there's not a C there, it could become a political issue. You see what I'm saying? Anyways, it's a quick breakdown. This is your boy Flacco, Convict's Perspective. Hit that like and subscribe, man.